Hello and welcome to another modelling video. This is Alan from the Meconoman YouTube with another tank armour review. Building the IBG Models 72nd scale Type 1 Chihi Japanese medium tank. The interwar period, especially the Japanese models, are my favourite. I've bought as many as you could think of over the years, though not too keen or quick to build them due to how complex the colour scheme is and wanting to do it freehand via airbrush. Finally getting my hands on a Badger Sotart and getting those lines just fine. With this recent purchase and release, decided to have a bit of a crack. Now, IBG releases the same tank over and over again with small changes and updates with varyingly beautiful and contrasting box art. Just be mindful that when you're collecting, you may be thinking you're getting multiple different kits, but they're all probably very similar besides a slightly different cannon hatch or whatnot. Just be mindful if that's your jam or not. Inside the beautifully presented box, a lot of the information on the sides and backs depict the colours and different schemes that are possible. Inside, everything is wrapped in plastic with 6 runners, a little baggie with the pre-molded tracks inside, decals and photo etch. So everything you need to get this all together. Also contained within the well illustrated box is the full coloured and rendered instructions, one scheme to depict with camouflage markings, a whole guide on paints covering different formats of polyurethane, acrylics, all that sort of stuff. A few bits of handy information and tips in handling the decals, the photo etch, roughly what you need. The instructions are streamlined and clearly show you which peg and part goes where on the tank. It is a very straightforward, easy, quick build that almost leans on the snap fit side of the hobby. A few ads in the back, and most importantly the look of the model finished at multiple sides, making sure you got stowage and the fine details finished. I find that very frustrating in some instructions and normally have to dig deep for reference material, especially something as rare as this in the historical wild. Getting straight into the build, it's something I'll definitely recommend for beginners. You start off with the pre-assembled tracks, cut out some wheels, and just doing a lot of tedious sanding to use flexible sandpaper or a sanding stick. Once you've got the flash mark all the way around the tracks and the nubs off the wheels, everything just glue and slot straight together. A very quick task. Following straight into the hull, which is slide molded into a pre-shaped box. Getting a bunch of flats and gluing it together is very time consuming. With a very solid hull, everything just falls right into place if the fitting is sufficient enough. We've cut out all the suspension and bits and pieces that hold the wheels into places, and the slots and pegs just slide straight in. Glue is definitely required. In a couple of steps, the entirety of the bottom hull is finished and the top starts taking shape. Again, the top half is slide molded with multiple edges, saving quite a bit of time and slapping right on top, negating any sorts of visual seams that might flash straight through the body. You can see on the underside that it is snap fit and goes together with one glue layer. The top half did have flash, that was so thin it was very easy to break away and sand up. Some of the details started to come into place, such as hooks, machine guns, and the top plate for the turret. This did create quite a noticeable seam. Not too sure if it'd be noticeable or not with the turret on top. I've decided to put Mr. Dissolved putty around the edges and sand it back the very next day. With such a small parts count, The majority of the time is used removing nubs, especially on the very thin stowage parts, which are slowly coming together around the hull. After that, everything just snaps together in 5 minutes with the turret. 2 halves, sinks into the very bottom, so the seam is not noticeable whatsoever. The cannon and the hatch just snaps straight into place, utilizing pretty much all of the parts. You are given an extra runner that has a couple of appropriate Imperial Japanese soldier figures, and that leads to a completed build. Depending on how much neatness, detail, attention and care you put in, this could take as little as half an hour to as much as 2 to 3 hours in cleanup, gluing, drying and assembly. I did this over 2 sessions to allow for sanding of putty. The photo etch was bent over a pencil or paintbrush handle and superglued into place, then hand painted Mr. Metal Primer to etch to our primer. Tamiya surface primer was sprayed on the top and bottom, then again sprayed with Gaia Note Eva Oxidized Red. 1 session to get into all the track work and underneath, and the second session colouring it all in. Dusting off my Imperial Japanese late war colour set, as well as a few lighter and darker colours for shading and undertones. Everything was coloured into the green form, followed by using the Badger airbrush, doing very fine lines for the pattern according loosely to the reference material in the instruction booklets, and then colouring it in, shading on top. They seem to not contrast as much as the box art, not knowing if the box art is overly historically accurate or if there is problems with the paint set. However, I'm pretty happy how it popped out. Afterwards, with a mixture of different lacquer colours, the stowage and little extra details, tank tracks were all hand painted, awaiting for weathering. With a very unique visual appearance and light military use, I've decided to keep it as clean as humanly possible and aim for a Chinese-esque weathering mainland use scheme. Applied the decals, worked, slid beautifully in room temperature water, gave it all a clear coat and applied a black sludge wash to get into all the detail, rivets and whatnot. Everything popped quite nicely, and did a light amount of pigment wash and weathering pencil pickups here and there to give it that touch of definition, swabbing it down with weathering thinner, and after a bit of time of drying, a few coats of lacquer matte clear. Some of the weathering layers did get layers of clear not to interrupt with each other. A bit of dusting of clear black, which is a favourite medium of mine of late, went at the bottom, some of the shadow areas and into the wheel well to give a bit of a natural shadowing, as well as build up of soot wherever vents or exhausts, as well as the end of the cannon for soot build-up. I found the reference material and instructions to be super helpful in the colouring of the rear lights and the handles of the shovels and other stowage pieces that I may not have picked up from my own research or looking up other models. I tend to be very quick with these models and sometimes sloppy on the historical accuracy of things. The instructions were very helpful with that, and overall with the build, the painting, the weathering, this was done in well under a week with a few hour session here and there. Very project, absolutely perfect as a mental build or just something to start and finish in between very heavy projects or stressful times of work or lifestyle. You don't really have to invest a lot into it. There's something there definitely for the beginners and quite skilled and experienced modelers. If you're going to chuck it in a diorama, tell a story, or just something to slap on the shelf, this is a brand that's very worthwhile looking into and collecting some of the other models, just being aware that they do multiples of the same type with slight variations and changes. Some people may not want to build the same model over and over again, thinking they're buying something that's completely different. All that aside, this is one of my favorite brands, especially how they get a lot of the Eastern European and very subtle and weird interwar, early war subject matter. In the way of my personal efforts, I believe this is just a really good model. Shake, bake, and awesome. Just don't ruin the painting. That aside, it does jump, it bounces out. I'm very happy how this has been finished in my hands. I have quite a few of these models bought and thrown in the stash, as well as a few more I'll definitely buy in the future as more releases do come out periodically. They do seem, proportion-wise, detail-wise, to be absolutely spot on, as nothing is perfect and there's always discrepancies, especially for rarer subjects, but who the hell knows. That's the end of the review. Definitely recommended. Thank you very much for watching. As always, until next time, stay tuned for further content. We have a bunch of references and links down below for my stuff and more information on the kit or subject. And we'll catch you guys next time. Stay tuned for more.